Welcome to the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast, the go-to place to gain financial freedom through real estate investing. Here we interview investors, mentors, and entrepreneurs who share their secrets and advice to help you build passive income. Let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, this is Augustino. The traditional education system that many of us learn as children and then into adulthood do not teach financial literacy we need in the new economy. The days of the 40-hour work week with a gold watch at the end of the 30-year career working with the same company, those days have long been over. Instead, we need to retool our skill set to generate our own income and manage, grow, and protect our wealth. Well, today's guest believes that the best way to achieve this is by taking control of one's financial future through structuring an efficient cash flow management system and creating and building assets that provide multiple streams of income, one of which is real estate. As someone who's experienced firsthand the challenges that real estate entrepreneurs face, it's become his mission and purpose to help these investors protect and multiply their wealth outside of Wall Street and really in any economy. To that end, he gets his message out as the host of the top-rated business and investing podcast on iTunes, Cashflow Ninja. With all that, I'd like to welcome MC Laubscher. So, hey, MC, thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you so much for having me on. Always enjoy our conversation. So I've been looking forward to this one. Excited.
Yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Well, if you like what MC has to say, you can reach out to him via his contact page at cashflowninja.com. And of course, if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a comment and rate the show. Finally, if you text FREEDOM along with your name and email address to 202-410-4202, you're going to receive our free ebook, The Bulletproof Guide to Finding a Broker. Okay, MC, go ahead and tell the listeners about how you got your start.
Yes, I love the Bulletproof Cashflow, right? Because it's all about cash flow.
That's it.
So super excited to jump into that. So I'm originally from South Africa. I came to the United States in about 2001. A couple of $100, backpack, suitcase, and a sense of humor and adventure. I mean, I traveled quite a bit, and what I've seen in this country is just so amazing. I always say, if you're born in the United States, you literally won the lottery. You have a lottery ticket because there's so much opportunity here and so much that you can do. So I actually played in a rugby league here for a while, for a number of years, up until 2007. While I was traveling a lot for sports, I started reading, and I came across a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which my mother actually gave me a copy of that book. That is how I went down the rabbit hole. I started studying everything I could about money and investing. I actually took action. It was around 2001, bought my first rental property at that stage. And that first time when you pay all of your expenses and you've got a little bit of money left at the end of the month from a rental property, you go, wow, how many times can I do this?
That's exactly what I did. Yep.
It's a game changer. Once that happens, you're like, wow. And of course, it's not rainbow and unicorns. That's not what real estate investing is, or any business and so forth. So had an initial success, but then reality sets in. Guess what? Who would have thought that people stop paying rent when they rent places, right? Who would have thought that tenants could destroy a property that you have, right?
They're all angels, though, for real.
Exactly. So, so you have all these things happen, and it's a learning curve, right? It's a journey. And while I was still playing sports and traveling, I actually had a friend whose family bought a ton of multifamily real estate. I was living in Chicago at the time, bought a ton of multifamily real estate, and I started working for him. It was tough to actually at that stage have a job playing in a sport that was considered semi-professional at the time, traveling. No employer is going to be like, hey, yeah, that's okay. Come in 2 to 3 times a week, and the rest of the time you just travel, right? So I actually started working for him, and I started at the bottom, which was, if I look back right now, what a great experience. I literally started with maintenance and turning over apartments in this large multifamily portfolio that they had. Right. So they would buy and sell a ton of buildings. They held on to a ton of them. So I worked my way up, started doing some property management for them, managing a large part of the portfolio. And I also had a broker's license. So I was involved in a lot of acquisition in it. And that's kind of where I learned a lot about real estate. Obviously a big fan about real estate. But also during all of this, besides the big aha moment that I had for cash flow, I had a big aha moment at that stage too, while I was in that brokerage office, because these guys were, how can I say, they were one of the firms on that side of the city that if you were a property owner that owned, 100 units up, and you were even thinking of selling or buying something else, you would talk to those guys. So I remember looking at properties and stuff. And there was one property that I was trying to get a hold of this owner because I knew that he had two different properties that he wanted to sell. And I still remember not even being able to get to him. I sat down at my desk. The same guy that I've been trying to reach just walked out of the other office. He's already closed the deal with those two guys. And it was basically done that he knew that he was going to walk in there, show him the two properties, and they were either going to buy it and keep it, or they would wholesale it, right? They already had a buyer's list. And at that stage, another big aha moment happened in my life where I said, you know what? It's almost impossible for the weekend warrior to compete with folks like that, right? So because everybody's like, oh, I'm a real estate investor. That's what they would say, right? But they casually look at stuff on the weekend. So I said to myself, there's no way that you can compete against these guys, right? It would literally be like a JV high school, football team trying to play against a bunch of NFL pros with the team and everything that they have behind them. So I also thought to myself, how do I get to partner with these guys? Because they have the best, they find the best deals. These are pros playing at a level that you just have to admire at the level that they're playing at. How do you get to partner with them? So that's kind of my philosophy that I've had through a lot of investments, is finding cash flow ninjas, as I call them, folks that are crushing it in their space, and then investing alongside them in the best possible deals and trying to do everything on my own. And then, a couple of other things happened. I discovered a cash flow management strategy that just blew me away. And this was about almost a decade ago. And about almost 5 years ago, we started our financial firm, Producers Wealth. And it's a wealth creation firm. We don't manage money. We help with strategy, and we help folks set up the infinite banking concept strategy, which shows them how they can become their own bank. And then we also look at a couple of other alternative investments. But that's kind of the background to all of this. The Cashflow Ninja podcast started almost 4 years ago. So three and a half plus years ago. It started as a passion project to talk about different ways of generating cash flow, because I just love to learn. I try to be a student, and I try to learn as much as I can about cash flow and cash flow management and so forth. So I've been interviewing, the top business owners and investors and also wealth experts that share this. And then I also have another show called Cash Flow Investing Secrets, where I literally take about 10 minutes and I just talk about one concept that I've learned interviewing, was it 550 plus cash flow ninjas on the show, because folks would always ask me, what are some of the things that you've learned? So we did a smaller show just where I share some of the things that I've learned on my journey. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, something you mentioned on the second aha moment about partnering. And oftentimes, like when I do my live events, actually I spoke at an event this past weekend. There's a lot of people that were there, and unfortunately for most, they're still wanting to get in this business. They still have a full-time job. They're trying to get into it, and they're competing against these pros, right?
Yep.
And I tell them, partnerships is the way you do it.
Yep.
But you have to bring something to the table. That's ultimately what it is. You can't just walk up to them empty-handed and say, I want to be your partner, but not have anything, right?
Right.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, how did you position yourself as a partner to some of these people? Like, what did you present to them to convince them that they really should be doing business with you?
Yeah, that's a great question, by the way. And someone asked me this at another event, a meetup that I spoke at too, because they said, well, I don't have any money to start. What do I do? Here's one thing that I've learned. And this is, this is something that was a game changer. And that most successful people, if you ask most successful people what they're looking for, what their main focus is, what they're working on, they're going to tell you. They know exactly what their focus is. They live very intentionally. So I found that a lot of folks would ask people and say, how can I add value to you? Well, that is good in and of itself. The question that I've learned, a great question to ask very successful folks is, what's your number one priority right now? What's your main focus? What are you trying to accomplish in the next quarter, in the next 6 months, in the next year? And those guys will laser it down and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I'm trying to acquire X amount of units in this area. And they'll give you specifics because they know that's why they're successful. So then taking the information that they give you, and then you've got to be creative if you don't have any money, right? Or you're going to look at it and say, well, how can I help that person accomplish or try to move the needle in some way, shape, or form of what they're trying to accomplish. So if it's someone that just told you the deal that he's looking for, right? And if you don't have any money to invest at that stage, why did you start looking for certain deals that fit that profile or that criteria, for example? Or there's other things that folks can do. I mean, everybody's looking for assistance in a certain way. Hey, I've heard about this market. I'm trying to get into that market. Well, if you have some time, why don't you research for him and say, and you don't even have to tell him that you're going to do that. Do a ton of research for him. Figure out who's the top 5 property management companies, call those folks and get back to them and say, hey, I know that you were interested in getting into this market. I went ahead and did some market research for you. Here are some of the main employers in there. Here's some of the different companies. Here's some of the neighborhoods, and here's some of the data that you're going to need in that specific ones. And there's a couple of property managers of the top. So there's a lot of things that you could get creative with this, right? Of trying to figure out, and all of a sudden you're going to become a person of value. And maybe someone that you can introduce them to as well, right? Because we're living on an economic planet, as you know, right? So There's always an exchange of value. It doesn't have to be money. Think of other things that you can exchange to people that's going to provide value for them. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
One thing, though, that all that stuff you just pointed out, it's not easy.
Right.
It's simple, but not easy. Especially if, I'll give an example. Actually, that's similar happened to me the other day. Wholesaler reached out to me with a small deal and way overpriced in a tertiary market. I don't buy that stuff. And usually if it's a small deal, I might give it to one of my students in our mentoring program, but I didn't like it. I didn't want my students to have that deal. But I told them, here's how you have to market this thing.
Right.
And explain to them by 6 o'clock. So this is at noon. By 6 o'clock, he already had it sold. With just talking to him. And so I enjoy helping people. But I did tell him too. Actually, he asked me, what do I need to do? How do I help you? I need deals, man. Later on that evening, he thanked me for the advice and told me he's got a 200 unit deal that just fell in his lap. He doesn't know what to do with it. Right. So he has a deal. We'll see what happens with it. But that's the point, though. I mean, he just got lucky. But some of the things you described, calling property managers, getting in front of them, that's going to take work. And that's the scary part for most people. It's for most people, you may look like a fool the first few times, but if you keep doing it, it'll be better for you. It will be better for you. That's how you get those deals done.
Yeah, it's such a great point. This is a lot of work. And that's what you're going to do if you don't have a ton of money to cut a check, right? So you're eventually going to be in a situation where you're going to be able to bring your own money alongside other investors' money in your network, or raise capital potentially, or something like that. But in the beginning, you're going to have to put in some sweat equity, or you're going to have to put in the hard work. And unfortunately, that's why not a lot of people do it, because it is that 4-letter word.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But you know what? The rewards on the other side of that are just huge, because most of us that didn't have any money, that's exactly how we started.
Yep.
You have to produce some sort of value to someone. And then, just like you said, we live on an economic planet, 100%.
Right.
And one thing you mentioned, though, too, when it comes to these multifamily investors, is you're partnering now in a different way through Producers Wealth. Maybe tell us a little bit about what that is, and how do you help these multifamily investors generate more income?
Yeah, so basically what we do with Producers Wealth is that's kind of for strategy, and Cashflow Ninja is the education form that we educate people, and we talk about different frameworks and so forth. And a lot of people then would listen to that and usually would say, okay, what's the next step? How do I implement some of these things? And through Producers Wealth, they can help on the implementation side. So I'll give you an example. So we talk about the 4 pillars to multiplying capital, because essentially that's what we're all trying to do, right? We're trying to take capital that's not positioned for its most effective use and its most efficient use, and position it to have it multiply for us by being more efficient. So the first pillar that I talk about, there's going to be a lot of CCs for your listeners here, is the first pillar is cash creation that we talk about, the ability to create and produce value for others, because money is a medium of exchange and a representation of value. So how do you do that? You can do that as an employee, right? You can do that through a high income skill set. There's a lot of employees making good money, whether they're doctors, lawyers, salespeople, executives, and so forth. They produce and create value. There's business owners that's over there. So that's the first pillar that we talk about. It's the foundation of everything that we do, because you're going to have to produce and create value for other folks on this planet. We're living on an economic planet. The second pillar is cash capture. And that's actually where you have to capture the value that you create and produce for others. Okay. And this is part of an infrastructure that you're trying to build, because you can make a lot of money and spend more money than what you make. Right. But essentially, you have to have an infrastructure where we consume less than what we produce. And the difference we have to capture somewhere. So that's when we look at capital positioning. So how do we position capital that's effective and is aligned with your goals? So I'll give you an example. We talk to a lot of people and they say, oh, I want to achieve financial freedom through investing in real estate. That's great. But why is the majority of your money then positioned in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds in a 401k doing nothing? And the other quarter of your capital positioning is in equity in your home. So if your home and your stock portfolio, how is that helping you get to your goal, if that makes sense? So you have to look and see where you position it. So there's different places where you can position it. We use overfunded life insurance contracts where we set up the infinite banking concept. It's our quote unquote business and investing bank. And you could structure a family bank with these contracts as well. So that's where we position capital. The other thing that I'll put under cash capture too is cash recapture. So a lot of folks are unknowingly losing thousands of dollars a month or per year. There's cash flow leaks, as we call them. So you have to be cognizant of cash flow leaks. Another big cash flow leak might be an opportunity cost. And I'll give you a quick example what I mean by that. So for example, we have someone in our network, current client of Producers Wealth. He was saving a certain amount of money per year and then allocating that to invest in real estate, right? So he was saving $200,000 a year, and he was going to just directly invest in real estate, and he was going to earn about an 8% return on some of the deals that he was already doing in. And his goal was to get to $360,000 per year of passive income. That was his goal. So when we looked at that, we said, well, if he doesn't reinvest the cash flows, it's about 22 and a half years. My math is correctly that it's going to take him to get to $4.5 million of deployed capital, which gets him that passive income at 8%. And if he reinvested it, it would be about 11 to 12 years, right, of approximately when he's going to get there. So we looked at that, position his capital efficiently, set up a family bank for him. He ran the money through the insurance contract first. And what was the results? Well, if he didn't reinvest the capital, it's about 20 years that he would have gotten to the same amount of capital deployed. It's only 2.5 years earlier, nothing to jump up and down. And if he had reinvested the cash flows, it would have actually been also about 11 to 12 years, again, approximately, same kind of range, right? So nothing has changed really on those two variables. But the variable that has changed, if you look at a 20-year time frame, in the end of 20 years, you would have an additional $1.46 million tax-free available by just positioning capital more efficiently and effectively. Now, I would look at that 1.46 million as an opportunity cost, right? That this 40-year-old male had by not doing something like that. So that's cash recapture. And there's a lot of other leaks. The first leak is taxes. Most business owners and investors overpay for taxes. So that would be the first one. There's a lot of different, maybe if you do an audit on insurance coverages, there's a lot of stuff that we might have a lot of overlapping coverages, right? That might be one thing. Here's another thing just for business owners and maybe for investors. If you're looking at 2022, I did an audit in the beginning of this year for just my membership subscriptions because we have a ton of stuff, right? CRMs and all this stuff that we use.
Oh yeah.
There was quite a lot of them that I didn't actually use, but I was still paying for them. So just something like that is so simple, but it's a couple of $100 that turns into a couple of $1,000 through the course of the year. So under cash capture, which is still the second pillar, we have effective capital positioning, essentially with the bank, cash recapture, and then cash automation. Now that you found that money, you've got to have a plan for it. Otherwise, it's going to go somewhere and it might not want to be within your plan. So you have to set up certain things that are just on, like sweep accounts is one of them, right? Just setting up a sweep account. The next part of it is under that umbrella too. We talk about collateralization, still part of capital positioning, right? You might have a lot of resources right now that you don't even know about because nobody's ever showed you or told you that you could use it to potentially use that for investments to align with your goals. I'll give you an example. Again, collateralization is simply when you place an asset for collateral that you now get financing on that you now can use the money to acquire another asset. So I like to think of it as using one asset to acquire another asset, which is pretty cool. So an example of that, a lot of people know, if you're a business owner, you're already doing this, is a business line of credit. You've collateralized, business receivables, business assets, and so forth. There's someone in our network, I'll give you an example, that collateralized his business, got a loan secured by the business, receivables, assets, and so forth, and bought the building that his business was operating from out, right? So what did he do there? He used his business, collateralized his business to buy real estate, to buy the building that he's in. So you use one asset to acquire another one. HELOCs is the same thing where you access equity, right? If you have a couple of properties, you access the equity through a HELOC, and now you roll it into the next property, right? Or a cash out refi. So you used one asset to acquire another asset. You could do that with stocks, right? So there's certain stock portfolios, very, very risky, of course, in my risk profile, but there's investment banks that allow you to get a loan secured by a stock portfolio. It's called asset-based lending. Gold, silver, art, commodity-based finance, right? There's certain institutions that allow you to get a loan secured by the hard assets. So you can do that too. It's funny, there's actually a cryptocurrency company that started allowing people to collateralize their Bitcoin and get a loan secured by their Bitcoin. Again, not something that I would personally do, but it's interesting because you talk about volatility. But very interesting because now, if you're raising capital for investments, just think about, these things and the conversations you can have. Life insurance, I already spoke about it. I was at an event and I did my presentation talking about collateralization. And the person came up to me afterwards and he said, I just want to verify this, that you can actually use the cash value in your life insurance to purchase a real estate. And I said, yeah, that's what we do. That's a part of our system. That's our favorite strategy, because he had over 7 figures in cash value sitting in a contract that he didn't know that you can use to actually invest in real estate. So he's like, so you're telling me that basically I just discovered over $1 million that I could use for real estate investing? I'm like, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Yes.
And that's tax-free, right?
Exactly. There's no taxes on policy loans. So just between those, think of the conversations you can have with investors, because what's the first thing that a lot of people say to folks when they're trying to raise capital? I don't have the money right now. It's not a good time, and so forth. And said, I completely understand, liquidity, it's feast or famine, right? Sometimes you get a ton of capital coming in. Sometimes you have a lot of capital going out on deals. But think about these different places that you might have some access to other money that you can use to grow and scale your portfolio. So that's still under cash capture. Cash flow creation is the third pillar, and that's basically where you invest in real estate for cash flow. There's different asset classes and different things that we do. So I know you talk a lot about that. Cash flow creation, very, very important part of this. The fourth pillar, which is by no means in order, because I usually put this one and make a circle around the other 3, because this one is so important, is cash control. And what we talk about cash control is tax strategy. From a holistic perspective, here's another aha moment out of my life. I sat in a family office. I had become good friends, an advisor in a family office, very high net worth families. And the first time I sat in to try and listen to some of their strategies, I was like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, what are they going to show me? This is going to be amazing. And I sat there kind of befuddled, and I'm like, man, they keep things so simple. Number one, it's not super complicated. And then the other thing is that the focus on the entire big picture of their overall picture is just quite astonishing and it's so simple. Again, most people focus on 10% of their money, they save 10%, and then they try to double or multiply that 10%, right? Where this family office approach is 100%. They had a ton of accountants and lawyers in there because the one gentleman remarked to me, he said, think about it this way, MC. If we reduce this family's taxes by 20% this year legally, there is no return out in the marketplace that can beat that. Zero. And think about that in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And now you've got more capital to invest in the other pillar, right? The cash flow creation, or put into your business. You and I had spoken earlier before the interview. When you talk to business owners, they always just think, and this is just how we're wired, right? A business owner and an entrepreneur is like, I can always just make more money.
Yep.
They don't make taxes a priority because they're like, I'll just make more money next year. I'll just grow, my company by 10, 15, 20%. I'll just make more money. What if you could keep 10 to 15 to 20% of the money that you make and make more money the next year?
Right. The delta's big. It's a big delta. It's 20%.
It's a massive, massive one. And it's the same thing with investors too. I'll just find the next deal. I just find that next deal. Take a look at your overall picture, figure out your tax strategy, because real estate, you talk about a fantastic asset class already with tax incentives. So that part is super important. Then the other part is asset protection. We live in a very, very litigious society, and we're relatively at the top of a market cycle and on many, many metrics. We're not in the crystal ball business, because that, by the way, is a really tough business to be in. But in downtimes, people get sued more, right? So you want to make sure that that's taken care of. You want to make sure that the estate planning is set up properly, all of the basic stuff. And it's quite incredible that that's a part that a lot of people completely skip, right? The will, testaments, trusts, that kind of stuff. So those are the 4 pillars, because I think, and that's what we teach. And then to your point with Producers Wealth, we implement and set up the infinite banking, the concept strategy, the overfunded whole life insurance policies on the second pillar, and bring that all together as far as strategy, making sure that, you're creating money, you're protecting money, you're multiplying money, and then also taking care and protecting what you're making.
And now, I guess your group would actually engage with the attorneys or engage with whatever people necessary to put all this together, right?
Yeah, so we focus on the life insurance part, but in our community, we have lawyers, that we can refer people to that structure estates and trusts, like some of the stuff that we talk about on the show. Because I think a lot of people, they hear certain information and then they go out into their network that they're at, and those folks are not familiar with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, if the insurance thing, for example, and that's why we have that available, for folks, is you can't run out to your brother-in-law that has a license and works for State Farm and get those policies set up that way, because there's a world of difference how insurance is sold at retail level, and then how the ultra wealthy and rich structure their insurance.
Right. But even outside of that, I think, especially for entrepreneurs that are just starting or still early in their career, they're leveraging their personal credit to go and buy all these assets, knocks their credit score down to the point where the bank doesn't want to lend them anything anymore, because they think that, oh my God, look at this guy's credit. It's terrible because of all the hits they're taking. But you would actually tell that entrepreneur, hey, listen, you can get a business line, right?
Yep.
They'll probably look at you like, really? I could do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is what I always say too, is with a lot of folks, we won't make them better business owners. Like, that's their unique ability, right? Everyone, they have their skill set. So what they're doing there, we're not going to be able to necessarily help with something there. And also as an investor, there's some investors that are just cash flow ninjas. We're not necessarily going to be able to help them to become a better investor. That's kind of everyone's each responsibility on themselves, right? But what we can show through cash flow management systems is to make small little tweaks and just put a little bit of rocket fuel on what they're already doing.
Yeah. And I think that having a second set of eyes on all those different systems, because I tell you what, like, my superpower is acquisitions. Like, I find deals and I can underwrite them like nobody's business, but I venture to guess that there must be leakage somewhere. There always is, right?
Yeah.
No one's got that completely down.
No, full disclosure, I keep finding them. I just found another one last month because it's an evolving process. And again, I just try to learn as much as I can from other folks when I meet them too, right? So sometimes you find you talk to someone else that is a ninja in a particular niche or something that they do, right? Health insurance. Just that's basically what's going on now is a lot of people on open enrollment and all this kind of stuff. And that was actually one of them where there was a huge leak that I had of, again, just one or two small little tweaks that I could do, but speaking to the right guy allowed me to see that there was something that I could be doing better.
Yep.
And that's going to save me thousands of dollars over the course of a year. And being cognizant that as you're growing, as your portfolio is growing, your real estate portfolio, your income and all those things, you always have to keep your eyes open for things like that because it's always going to creep in. You could try to be bulletproof with that, but there's always going to be, one or twice, and then you just fix it and remedy it and plug those leaks, right?
Yep. Well, shifting gears, one more thing to ask you, just like me, I came to this country. I'm not from here originally. I came here from Canada. And I just love what America has done and provided for me and my family. I know you feel the same way.
Yeah.
Maybe share some thoughts around the opportunity, that whole sense, because it's funny because I said the same thing you said. There's so much opportunity here if you apply yourself. And maybe just share some thoughts around that for those listeners out there that maybe feeling a little bit down right now because they're not really sure of what to do. And I mean, you came over here the same way I did. My first car when I drove over here when I was going to school didn't even have a floor in it.
Yeah.
Or rusted. It was rusted out. So
yeah, absolutely. And what I would say to folks too, if you think about the time that we live in right now, right? And maybe some of your listeners are Star Trek fans. If you look at what is Starship Enterprise that they were all on,
yep.
And they would have a screen that would pop up and they would, communicate to other folks somewhere else. And I say, if you think of really what we're living in, the time that we're living on right now, or living in a time where we have Star Trek technology and it's free on a smartphone, you and I can jump on Zoom, Skype, and all of a sudden we're seeing each other just like in the Star Trek episodes. Yep. And it's free. Now's the time because of the playing field that's so level. I mean, the internet was the great equalizer. There's certain things that entrepreneurs are doing that the big corporations can't keep up with them. And before internet, just think of the budget that you had to compete with those guys. Now someone can start a business because of the flexibility and the mobility that they have and the stuff that they can do through technology online, that they could literally, give those guys a run for their money. So if you're feeling down right now and you're at a place where you're looking to find some inspiration, I would say, think of it this way, that the resources that are available right now is resources that have not been available basically to any other generation on this planet. So unfortunately, this is the world that we live in. You can either sit on the sidelines or you can jump in and leverage this technology and use it and start something and create, because everyone's got a unique ability. Everyone's got a unique story, and especially in the United States.
Yeah.
Because the United States is on the cutting edge of technology. There's stuff in this country that you can do, and you're closer to all of this rapid innovation too. So stuff that is rolled out is here first before it's everywhere else. So you not only get to be a part in this, I would say, in this country where that people think big, which I love. Americans think really big. It's crazy.
They do. Way bigger than Canada, I'll tell you that.
Oh my goodness. Americans think very, very big. So you're in an environment where people not only think big, but they can act on it. And you actually get a head start as, things go into beta testing and rollout and so forth. So I would just say, it's a fantastic time. And if you're living in the United States right now, you need to leverage this. And I would also say this, there's a lot of negative stuff, not only just in the United States, but globally. There's an election. It feels like there's almost an election every single year. Really. It's crazy. But anyway, there's elections globally, not just in the United States. There's a lot of negative stuff, a lot of really negative stuff all over the place. And it's done by design because the business model of a lot of media corporations, unfortunately, have changed. So it doesn't matter whether you're left, right, center, there's a lot of negative stuff. So what I try to do, and not just with relation to that type of stuff, but in all areas, is trying to control your environment. So if you can control your environment to take care of your health, to take care of your family and your relationships, and to take care of your money, right? Then it's going to move the needle so much faster and quicker. You can either, participate in the madness and the chaos and get swept up in all of the negative stuff, or you can control your environment, focus on positive stuff because you can control your mind and see the opportunities that are just abundant and get to jump in and participate in.
Yeah, that's right. Push all the negative aside. That's, I just got off another podcast saying the same thing. You got to push out all the negative, and even to the people, get rid of anything negative in your life and just focus on the positive, focus on what you can do.
Yep.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, guys. If you want to reach out to MC, you can reach him via his website, cashflowninja.com. Hope you got a lot of this. I certainly did. Thank you for your time, man. Greatly appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Always enjoy our conversation, my friend.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Bulletproof Cashflow podcast. For more free podcasts, articles, videos, and resources, go to www.bulletproofcashflow.com.